Hello, everybody. Welcome to Redistricting Radar, our new Wednesday show at Elections Daily, where we review each state's redistricting process for congressional lines in 2022 each week. We're excluding the at-large district states for obvious reasons, but every other state we will touch on in a weekly episode. This is our first one. We're covering the state of Alabama. Each week we'll alternate who introduces the state's redistricting process for 2022. And this week we're going to start with Eric Cunningham talking about how Alabama redistricts. And it is a pretty standard process, the classic process. So Eric, you can go ahead.
Yeah. So Alabama is a really basic state, and it's a really simple state to start out with. So this will give you an idea of what we're kind of looking, what we're going to go through here. So Alabama is your very typical state where you have the legislature passing the maps, and then the governor can veto it. It's very simple in Alabama because not only do Republicans have a majority, they actually have a supermajority in both houses of the legislature. So even if there's really no, even if the governor for some reason vetoed the map, which there's no reason to suspect Kay Ivey would veto a Republican map, the map can still be passed by the legislature. In theory, the Constitution kind of outlines that in theory they're supposed to follow the county lines, be compact, be contiguous, communities of interest, and so on. In reality, those are non-binding. So the current map is definitely Republican favored, although it's worth noting, if I recall right, Alabama still had a Democratic legislature as recently as 2010. So it's not been not necessarily been the case in previous decades. But this will be one of the second decade with Republican complete control over the redistricting process in Alabama. And so you're going to see a map that's very similar to what the maps we have at the moment. The current map is a 6-to-1 Republican map. It's actually such a strong Republican gerrymander that even in the the special election for the Alabama Senate seat, which was won by Doug Jones, he only won one congressional district in the entire state, even though he won the. Yeah. So that is that strong of a gerrymander, and there are multiple reasons for that we'll go into here. But I'll kind of throw it off to, I guess, either one of you to kind of explain the main motivating factors behind drawing the Alabama map. But I can pull up what the Alabama map looks like at the moment to give you an idea, because it's very similar to what Republicans have drawn in other states when they have control of the process.
Yeah, well, the current Alabama map is, I wouldn't say very interesting, but it is very effective in what it does. It is possible in Alabama, at least in a normal-looking map, to draw 2 Democratic seats. But here you obviously have 1 Democratic seat that packs the African-American population of the state roughly into 1 district in the 7th district, which is about 60% black. So that 7th district pretty much includes a bulk of Alabama's black population. And the goal of that essentially is, well, there aren't really any rural white Democratic voters in Alabama anymore to the same extent that there have been over the past few decades. So for the most part, urban and rural blacks make up the Democratic coalition in Alabama. So when the Alabama's map effectively now just prevents large populations of black voters from being in traditionally Republican districts. So you have that 7th district there. As you can see, it includes strongly black populated counties, typically rural counties in the standard black belt. And then it also includes little juts going into Birmingham and Jefferson County and Montgomery. Interestingly enough, and one thing that I actually changed on my map is a county like Macon County, which is to the right of Montgomery, if you want to zoom in there. That's actually an 82% black county, if I recall, heavily Democratic, and Bullock County as well. And both of them are not in the 7th district. I fixed that. Part of the reason for that is the incumbent in the 3rd district actually lives in Macon, but as Armin and I decided, he can just move to the new district essentially, because kind of like a Jeff Sessions style Republican living in a heavily black county as a white Republican. And basically by packing all the African American voters into 1 district, you get a 1st district that's not competitive, a 2nd district that's not competitive, and moreover, you get a 6th district that takes in all the Republican white areas of Jefferson County that's just not competitive. And then you obviously get hyper Republican seats like the 4th, which are very, very Republican. Armin and I both got over R+20. So yeah, I mean, it's an effective map nowadays. I mean, if you look at it back in 2010, before the new lines were drawn, originally Parker Griffith was, I know he's a Democrat now, but before he switched to Republicans, he was a Democrat, elected in 2008, and he held that Mo Brooks seat or the equivalent. And then you had Bobby Bright in the 2nd district there, which is now held by Martha Roby. So traditionally you still had Democrats who were able to win these white seats that were trending to the Republicans. But nowadays, that's just not the case anymore.
Yep. Really, the only substantial portion of the state with an African-American population that is not absorbed here is in Mobile County. Mobile, Alabama has a large black population. And in fact, it's one of the closer counties in the state at this point. By that, I mean it's only a Republican plus 20 county, if you look at some of the recent results. But it does have a sizable population that could have been absorbed. Obviously, the split in Montgomery is kind of weird, although it makes more sense at the local level because until recently, the mayor of Montgomery, even though it's been a very Democratic area overall, was actually a white Republican until fairly recently. So at the local level, it makes a little bit more sense to do that sort of split. But obviously, this isn't a fair map in really the sense of a term. The only district that really makes a whole lot of sense on the face of it is the 5th district, which is, of course, it's a relatively fair and compact map, I'd say, in that portion of the state.
Yeah, no, I think everybody has said great things. I mean, ultimately, I think when Alabama Republicans have redistricted in mind, the goal is how to, preserve as many Republican votes and Republican leading seats as possible, and that means, I mean, because of the Voting Rights Act, you basically have to stuff every black voter that you can into that 7th district, and then you basically just crack every other one, which is why the current 2nd is drawn the way it is. Because as Nathan Jordan in the public chat said, the old 2nd had a larger portion of Montgomery into it, and that was what powered Bobby Bright's win in 2008, because he was the mayor from there. He did better than expected in the Wiregrass and in those areas in the southeast of Alabama, but he still lost them pretty badly.
I just want to quickly clarify something I said earlier, and it was an error from the data that I had. And it was basically when I looked on Wikipedia when I was making the map. If you look on the congressional delegation page for Alabama, it says that Mike Rogers lives in Tuskegee, which is in Macon County. And I guess that's incorrect because I, as Nathan Jordan said, when you click on his congressional page, it says he lives in Anniston, which would be further north. So I don't know why that's incorrect, but Armin and I, when we were drawing the map, were under the impression that he did live in Macon County. But at the end of the day, it makes more sense to have Macon County in the 7th because it fits better there than it does.
It's a rural black
district. It doesn't fit with the white Wiregrass areas. And
the Montgomery area is definitely the strangest of the district splits here. And it's not necessarily for any reason that has to do with logic, or I think it's more of an incumbency thing. I think Martha Roby is from Montgomery. So obviously she would have wanted to have more of the Montgomery area to, kind of show up a primary challenge because she had been, and, obviously you don't know the strength of running in that area. I mean, she has been able to fend off multiple primary challenges. So in that regard, maybe that's been successful, including from Bobby Bright himself, who ran as a Republican, if I recall right.
Yeah, in 2018 he did.
Yeah, he tried to come back. Yeah, it would have been ironic if he.
I mean, he should have. Bobby Bright should have run as a Republican in 2020 because it was an open seat. And even last time he got 32% of the vote, which theoretically could have been enough to win this year's primary. But back on point, one thing people are talking here about, it's possible to do 2 Democratic districts. And that's what I said earlier. But since the point of redistricting radar is basically to focus on the most likely outcome, it's basically impossible to see an outcome where a Republican supermajority legislature would draw anything but a 5-1 Republican gerrymander. Unless they hold a seat, we expect Alabama to lose a seat. But Eric also did a map where Alabama doesn't lose a seat. So we expect it to either be a 6-1 or 5-1 Republican gerrymander.
And I can actually go ahead and show that map, the 6-1 map I made, which is
we're at the 10-minute mark, so you can go ahead and do that, and then we'll show our.
The other thing is that just given how Alabama's population distribution is laid out, and the population growth rates, it's becoming increasingly difficult to draw 2 Democratic leading seats on a 6-district map. Like
it's hard to do.
You need some
that complies with the VRA.
Yeah. To make it a VRA compliant seat, you need to do some pretty egregious gerrymandering.
So really, like a fair map would probably, like, we're not doing fair maps on the show. We're doing the most likely maps. In some states, that will be fair. In some states, there may be a fair map that we've drawn. But in a fair map of Alabama, you'd probably have one district rooted entirely in Birmingham, and just that surrounding area, maybe pull in Tuscaloosa, and it would be very, very slim Democratic advantage. And then the Black Belt district stretching from the rest of the state. But obviously, that's not a scenario that's likely, especially with a 5-1 map. So this is a 6-1 map I've made. There is always the possibility that Alabama, there may be undercounts in New York and California and Illinois, some other states that have potentially had problems in the past, which could enable Alabama to have and maintain its congressional districts. So what are the changes I made here? One of the few areas of the state that's actually has a growing population is the 5th district. The 5th district is actually almost exactly the same as the old map, except a little portion of the 4th pulls into it right here. So you see it actually gained a little bit of population from last time, because these lines otherwise are exactly similar if you compare it to the other map. The 4th, again, kind of stretches along that border from the county that Birmingham is in, and then just kind of goes along through the mountainous area, still kind of Appalachia, and then also into Tuscaloosa, the more white areas of that county. So that's, again, this is an incumbent protection map. So that's the entire point of this, is to make the incumbents as safe as possible. Another one that's a major change is the 6th, which is more rooted almost entirely in the Birmingham area. And this is fine for the Republican there, because not only is the district overwhelmingly Republican, it's R+21, a district that, would be won by Republicans with 65 to 70% of the vote. He also lives in that suburban area on the kind of the border between these two counties right here. The 3rd is a major change. It actually kind of absorbs some of those Montgomery area districts in the upper portion of Montgomery. The two areas above there, these two counties right here, are extraordinarily Republican. If you look at the county names right here,
Autauga, Elmore, yeah,
and Elmore, they're very, very Republican, and there's no reason they shouldn't be in a Republican district. You'll notice the second district as well. It's shored up for the new representative there, who was from Coffee County. So this district kind of stays the same, but takes in more of Montgomery proper, and kind of averts having these two black belt districts right here, Macon and Bullock, which go into the new 7th.
So that would protect Barrymore, essentially, versus other maps where we get double bunked with Jerry Carl in the 1st district.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say in all of our maps, Barrymore is the person who gets screwed over because of seniority. He has the lowest seniority, so accordingly, will have the least favorable chance at retaining his seat. Finally, one that doesn't change much at all is the 1st district. The Republican in the 1st district, it's Bradley Byrne. Bradley Byrne is a very popular person, and even though this district could be made a little bit more Republican if you drew out some of the portions into Mobile, there's really no reason for it to change too much. I don't think he'd really want the geography to change a whole lot.
I mean, he's retiring, so
yeah. So
he's retiring, and South Alabama whites are extremely inelastic, so there's no chance that.
And the new guy there, Republican Jerry Carl, who won the primary, is just the Mobile County Commissioner, so that would make sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's no reason to split Mobile County. If you were going to do aggressively, you could. But obviously, we're not going to do that in this case. So
I think Rozek did that, but
So as you can see with this, it's very simple, very, very similar. The only real major changes are in the Montgomery area, and that's because Martha Roby retiring clears up the Montgomery area to have a cleaner looking map, if you want to call it that, even though this really isn't an extraordinarily clean map, if you want to.
Well, it's kind of hard to get a clean map in Alabama. Any gerrymander is not going to be particularly clean. Can you show us your 6th district?
Sure.
Map?
And so this one is, again, the two freshman incumbents kind of get screwed over here, but this is just as a fact of the matter. The districts are expanding. They're larger in size. And so as a matter of just, basic fact, there are going to be the two people who are new are going to get screwed over. So you'll notice a big change right away here is given the population has to be much higher in these districts, Montgomery County, the district based in Huntsville, the 5th district, has to expand to include multiple other counties from the Huntsville area, namely Lawrence and Colbert, as well as a portion of Franklin County. Mo Brooks would have no difficulty winning the seat, of course, and so that's not a big deal along there for him. The 4th also sees a major change because of the expanding population, it has to take in that northern portion of Jefferson County, which is fine, again, because the incumbent representative in the 6th district lives in the southern portion of the county or along the border. So there's really not a difficulty with taking over that northern portion. It also takes over the county of Pickens, which is one of those borderline majority-minority counties that votes
extremely racially polarized.
Yeah. It's at this point, it's worth Republicans just packing it into the 4th district. And if you look at the vote totals here, this is a Republican plus 30 district. This would be one of the most Republican districts in the entire country. In fact, if you look at the PVI here, you can see there's basically the only pocket of blue really comes from that southern portion of Pickens County. So overwhelmingly Republican district. So what about the third? The third is another change. Is the incumbent Republican in the third district is Mike Rogers, who lives in Anniston, which is in this county right here. So his district remains mostly the same, and it kind of draws in some of the northern or some of the middle portions of the current Martha Roby's second congressional district. So that's kind of a big deal right here, as it takes in these areas around here, which kind of border the areas you would expect Barry Moore to kind of win, given he's from rural Coffee County. So his district should be fairly safe for him, and it's not a big deal that this is done. It's going to be a difficult run for him regardless. For Barry Moore. The sixth district as well, extraordinarily Republican, R+20. It actually draws in a more Democratic-leaning portion of Montgomery, but that's mainly because I wanted to put in Macon and Bullock into the third or the second congressional district in this map. And so that's why it kind of stretches over there. It's easier to pull the south along there and then to pull along the north. So that's kind of why I made that change. Yeah. And so the second congressional district obviously is a big change. The second goes, given the seventh is the one that's eliminated, the district that the VRA district now goes into the second congressional district. And it's an extremely VRA district. It's Democrat +22. Hillary Clinton would have won this probably with around 75% of the vote. And as you can see with this map, if you just look at the things here, aside from a couple of Republican areas in these two rural counties right here, it draws in the most Democratic parts of not only Montgomery County, but also Mobile County and also Birmingham. So very, very, very Democratic district, and it's definitely a vote sink in that regard. The first would be the competitive one. And because obviously Bradley Byrne is retiring from his district, there's a lot of leeway here. So basically the first would pit the new incumbent from the first congressional district, the new representative there, against Barry Moore. You'd have the battle of the freshmen. And out of this, I would expect actually the Mobile area to be more dominant over the portion. But I actually want to kind of show you the demographics here real quick, as the numbers we're talking about.
Most of that district probably is in the Mobile media market, is what I would think.
Yeah, most of the district would vote. If I had to guess, that in that primary, you'd probably have it split in half, voting for Carl and Moore, and Carl would win because Mobile has a greater stake.
Mobile is a very large city, but keep in mind that Mobile, most of the urban portion of Mobile, the black areas are in the second district now. Just to show you what we're talking about here.
Carl's still the commissioner, so.
Yeah, you'll notice here that over 60, out of the 800,000 or 810,000 people, nearly 600,000 of them live in the areas that are more adjacent to Mobile. So unfortunately for Barry Moore, he probably doesn't come out on top in this scenario. But that's kind of the stakes of being a freshman in a redistricting cycle. If you lose a congressional district,
Besides, I mean, Richard Shelby is old and Kay Ivey is pretty old too, and there's a decent chance that one or both of them vacate their office. So It's not like they're going to be completely out of a job.
Yeah, he could run for an office like that. He could run for a statewide position, but obviously, given that he is from Coffee County, which is by no means a large county at all, and the other representative would be from Mobile County, Mobile area, it would be expected the Mobile area will be favored. Kind of like how if you were watching a stream last night,
if he wants to commit political suicide, he can always jump into your second district and run for re-election.
Yeah, that would be that would be wild, right? He would be moving into a different district,
into a majority black district too, no less.
But we saw a similar dynamic on the Democratic side in Florida's 5th congressional district, I believe, which is a VRA district that stretches from Tallahassee to Jacksonville. The Jacksonville portion is included in there, but it's a minority of the district. So even though Jacksonville consistently gives the incumbent Democrat there far fewer votes than he would normally get, it's the Tallahassee portion is what pulls it over. It's the exact same thing here. Is the strength of the vote in that area adjacent to Mobile, and then the Mobile media market would really make this district.
And that's why you see in his primaries and Al Lawson's primaries, the really Jacksonville versus Tallahassee style election.
Yeah. Of course, there's always a chance, Barry Moore was one of the first representatives to endorse President Trump. So there's always a possibility he could win by presenting himself as the most Trumpy candidate. But on a purely geographic basis, he would be kind of up the creek without a paddle if you look at the map, really.
It's fair, yeah.
Yeah. I guess I'll show my map now.
Mm-hmm.
I have the current map up as well for Alabama, so let me
Yep. And keep in mind, these aren't fair maps. These are what we're considering to be the most likely. What I went with was an incumbent protection map, where my goal was to make sure incumbents not maintain the brunt of their congressional district and their districts.
Yeah, Harrison and we did that
basically
under the impression that Rogers lived in Tuskegee.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it doesn't matter because Anniston is also in my district, is my 3rd district as well. Or I guess it would be numbered as 2 on my map, but whatever.
Yeah.
So I know people may disagree with this style, but whenever something loses a seat like this, I just do everything a number down, essentially. So,
I maintain the current number just out of respect for the current district.
Whatever. It's not that big of a deal. So we have our 1st district. The 1st district basically stretches now. It includes, if you want to look at the current map, so the 1st district includes, essentially, it includes all 6 of the counties it currently includes here. My Clark County split is slightly different. I swung it around to the south to make it look a little bit better. So now you have a Clark County split here. So rather than the middle of the county, the split starts bordering Washington County and is adjacent to Monroe. But this includes Jerry Carl's home of Mobile here. And it moves over, actually. So the current one would stop at Escambia, but this one moves over and takes in a few counties in the current 2nd district, so Covington, Coffee, and Geneva. So it draws Barry Moore's home county into Carl's seat. So once again, I mean, this area, which is essentially Carl's base here in the old 1st district, would make up a significant portion of the primary electorate. I would say probably 2/3 of it. So not really enough for these counties over here to deliver a victory for Barry Moore in a primary. So kind of like Eric, I double bunked Jerry Carl and Barry Moore, and Barry Moore would probably not survive. I guess theoretically Barry Moore could always run in this 2nd, which is equivalent to Mike Rogers' 3rd, but that's hypothetical. Either way, it doesn't look too good for Barry Moore.
He'd probably have to move from his county to be able to do that.
I mean, you technically don't have to, but
but it's a bad look. It's
well, yeah, basically. And then my 6th district is the VRA seat here. So as you can see, I included much of the same in terms of the rural black counties here. I went down to Clark, but again, I changed out the portion of Clark that's in the district. I did have to include Conca and Butler County in here to make up for population, but after that, I swung through. I took in the northern part of Montgomery County, so the predominantly black areas of Montgomery County, whereas the Republican suburban areas were drawn into the new 2nd district, which would be Rogers' seat. And then I took Macon and Bullock because both of them are heavily black counties, as you all know. I mean, Macon County, as you can see, is 83% black. Bullock County is 71% black. And even Butler County has a significant black population, both Butler and Conca County, if it's technically a plurality or minority. And I removed Pickens County and reduced the amount of Tuscaloosa that's in the district, but I still kept my Tuscaloosa string through here over to Jefferson County, taking in the predominantly African-American areas in Birmingham here. So essentially, if you turn on the demographics on DRA, this takes in all of the black neighborhoods in Birmingham. So it maximizes that amount of black population in Jefferson County. And you get a 62 to 35.5 majority black district, which satisfies VRA. It's about D plus 20, and it's actually slightly more black than the current district if we're going by 2010 population. Actually, sorry, if we're going by, I used both. So for voting age population 2010, I don't have that here, but for total population, this one would be slightly more black, but for current population, for voting age, it would be slightly more. The point is, it's still a heavily Democratic district, and Terry Sewell will have no problem winning this district at all. Moving on. Sorry, I meant to do that and then do this. Yes, so up here in Calhoun County, that's where Anniston is. So Mike Rogers would be fine in this district. This is actually one of the more Republican seats on this map. It's R plus 17. He would have no problem winning it. And Barry Moore could run a primary challenge threat since it does include a significant half, essentially, of the current 2nd district. But again, in terms of this portion of Alabama, on the eastern border of Georgia right here. Rogers is currently their congressman for most of those counties, so he would have greater name recognition. Plus the fact that technically Barrymore doesn't live in this district, so he'd have to move. If we go up to the 5th district, the current 5th district is based on the 6th, where Gary Palmer is from. And once again, apparently this is wrong. He doesn't live in Vestavia. So if you click here,
he lives in Hoover, right? Yeah.
He lives in Hoover, and Hoover is basically on the border there between Jefferson. But this actually, my current map actually does include that here for the 5th. So if we turn on counties, Hoover is in the district, so he's fine. Gary Palmer would run in this district. Basically takes in the Republican areas to the north of Montgomery and to the south of Birmingham. And it forms, again, a very Republican district, just a little bit less Republican than the 3rd, which is equivalent to the current 4th. So that's around R+23. So, again, no problem, another protected incumbent. If we go up to the 3rd district, which would be Adderholt's district, this is almost R+30, so the reddest seat in the state, which is same with the current 4th, which is currently the most Republican in the state. This time it's numbered as 3. But again, the territory here doesn't change too much. Some slight changes, but nothing major. I did up here with 4 as well. This is the equivalent of Mo Brooks' seat, another fairly Republican seat, R+18, based around the Huntsville area. And again, Mo Brooks would be fine here. So, yeah, if we load up the statistics here, all of them are contiguous. Deviation is far below the court limit, and we satisfy the VRA requirement here, and it protects essentially every incumbent except Barry Moore, who would either run against Rogers or more likely Jerry Carl. But like we all said, when you're losing a seat, you get to protect every incumbent except the least senior one. So here, basically, I did a Republican gerrymander. Incumbent protection satisfies the VRA requirement. So I view this, in my opinion, as a realistic map. Obviously, we don't know exactly what will happen, but an incumbent protection Republican gerrymander is something that's reasonable to expect from a state like Alabama with the system they have.
And it's so red. There's really not a whole lot of thing they have to worry about with diluting the votes to protect these incumbents.
Yeah,
they really don't have to worry
it's
about
a
that
fairly easy state to do incumbent protection
in.
Yeah.
So Armin, if you want to show us your map.
Yeah, sure. So, okay. There you go. Can everybody see?
I'll add it to the stream, but get to your map first. That way I'm not showing the background here. There we go. Perfect.
Did my map work when I showed it to you guys, by the way?
It did.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
No, so, I wasn't telling you because I didn't want to embarrass you.
So, yeah, here you go. Here you have my map. And so I was pretty shameless about the county splitting rules because clearly since the 1990s, the conservative white Democrats and now the conservative white Republicans haven't given a crap about county splits. So I said, why should I? So essentially, okay, I'm going to take the county lines off because my eyes hurt looking at this. There we go. That's better. So I guess incumbent protection, right? Like there's not really much you need to do except decide which one of the freshmen you're going to get rid of. And so I drew this under the impression that Mike Rogers lived in Tuskegee. And it turns out Anniston isn't even in the district that's the successor to his, but he can just move if he really wants to. We can calculate that later. But if we're going to go in order, so the first is the successor to the old first. It has all of Mobile County and basically takes in everything that isn't a majority black precinct in southern and eastern Alabama. Coffee County is actually in this current second district, so Barrymore probably could run there.
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting because you took a different strategy of bunking him with Rogers instead of Carl, like Eric and I.
That's true. Yeah, because I completely forgot about the fact that Carl is a freshman. Yeah, that and the other thing.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you do that because you figured that the area where Moore was from was more similar geographically and culturally to Rogers District?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not a fan of putting Mobile, which is kind of similar to Pensacola and Pascagoula and those other Gulf Coast cities. I'm not a huge fan of putting this area here with Enterprise, Dothan, Midland City, Ozark, the Wiregrass, which is a very different kind of Republican, and it's definitely not as similar to, Eastern Alabama up here, but it's definitely more similar to Eastern Alabama, to Auburn, to Columbus, than it is to the area down here in the coast. And I mean, this is shameless, but I think this is a tolerable level of shameless compared to, at least historically speaking, according to, the historical map precedent of Alabama. A Mobile to Dothan district is not something that's typically been seen. So I guess if we go to the second district, essentially what this does is this pits Barry Moore's base here down in the Wiregrass against, well, so Mike Rogers is actually from Anniston, which is one county over, but he can still move because, I mean,
he still represents all that northern territory.
Yeah, he still represents all of this. So if we just if we get rid of Barry Moore's totals right now, you see Rogers still represents basically 55 to 60% of the map right now. So he would definitely be favored in the primary. It wouldn't be as, Barry Moore wouldn't be as done as he would be in some of your maps, but he'd definitely be a tough underdog for this. And as you can see, I was very shameless with the VRA seat. So I basically just did a Tom Hoffler and surgically took out all of the majority white precincts and then just gave them to the Republicans. So moving on to the third district, this is where the numbering gets a bit funkier because, the third is historically an East Alabama district, but that's now the second, which was the formerly like the Montgomery-based Wiregrass district, got moved into now being the Wiregrass plus East Alabama. So now the third is, the successor to the old 6. And the old 6 looked awful. There's no reason that Shelby and Blount County should be in the same district. So what I basically did is I took all of the white suburbs of Birmingham and Shelby, which is, suburbs and exurbs that are extremely white and extremely Republican, and basically just filled it in with the remainder of the central Alabama bit. St. Clair.
I think we all got rid of that little hook that the current 6th has in our 6th.
Yeah.
I think all of us did that. That's pretty cool.
It's a really weird.
It's kind of unnatural.
And so, so that's 3. Gary Palmer, he lives in Hoover, which is right over here. He'd had absolutely no problem holding the seat. It's trending leftwards somewhat, but it's really slow, the trend, and it is still R plus 23. So he is not going to be in any danger for a very long time. Now 4, this seat here looks very similar to the 1990s Alabama 4th and the 4th that existed before, that was represented by the king of the legacy Democrats, Tom Bevel. Obviously, no Democrat would win this today because it's now R plus 33, and the composite score has a Republican at 81, which means Trump probably got above that.
Which is absurd.
And as Jackson Bryman did say,
it's redder than Texas 13. So
it's not that sprawling of a district. If you think about it, most of the population is concentrated in these Birmingham areas and in these counties immediately to the north that I guess far exurbs of Birmingham. And Adderholt lives in Haleyville, so he's going to be fine. There's not really too much to say, but I saw what you guys did with Pickens, and essentially what I did is I again was very shameless in you see that's where the district line is, and the blue is all the majority black areas, and I basically just surgically excised them from Pickens.
I can't wait to see
map
wait to see
more.
Armin's other southern gerrymanders in the VRA.
It could honestly be even more like surgical when you go to splitting precincts. Like Republicans have done that before, to split a precinct in half.
We can't do that in DRA.
No, it's not that.
But a real map can be even more shameless than this.
Yeah, no, and I think the shamelessness comes from the knowledge that, well, one, the GOP doesn't want redistricting lawsuits calling them racists on their hands, and second of all, packing as many Democrats into this one seat bleaches the others, and it's more effective to the GOP's reelection strategy to have the one minority, probably Congresswoman Terry Sewell, be the face of the Democratic Party in Alabama, because that kind of redistricting strategy was very effective in consolidating the South for the GOP. And so, yeah, Gadsden's there. I mean, Roy Moore can, come back from the mall and decide to run if he wants to.
Could we theoretically see a Mike Rogers suicide against Gary Palmer in a Republican primary?
I mean, he could try, but the only part of his base that's in the seat is Anniston, and that's not even 12% of the seat. I mean, Talladega, I guess, but
just to keep in mind to the viewers that Armin and I, when we drew these maps, we didn't know that he was in Calhoun County.
Yeah.
I did actually, without thinking, include Calhoun in the second, but we didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, no, yeah, and besides, this current third functions as somewhat of a suburban, exurban seat. I mean, Shelby, Talladega, Calhoun, St. Clair, and
what's the PVI on that seat?
This one is R plus 23.
Yeah.
And you can make even crazier Republican districts in just northern Alabama. It's just that Republican is. These areas are.
The second is the more rural one, which I guess. Yeah, but I mean, North Alabama's red enough, and like, why do you want to crack it? Like, I feel like the GOP is not going to. They're not going to do that, and besides, in a lawsuit, they can just say, "Look, we created this really blue district in the 6th, so obviously our map is fine." So,
and Huntsville is very fair here. The Huntsville seat is just it is what it is.
Yeah,
I mean, Huntsville is pretty.
If a seat is at the very extreme edge of a state, there's really not a lot you can do with it without looking really shameless. Yeah, so now we move to the 5th, which I guess even 10 years ago would have been somewhat competitive.
I thought this comment was kind of funny.
What?
Jackson said it literally bleaches the others by making them whiter.
No, yeah, it does. It does. Yes, Jackson, that's a good one. But this 5th one here, 10 years ago, it would have been competitive with a Parker Griffith, provided he ran as a Democrat.
Yeah, and now he's switched parties like 17 times, so...
It's okay. I mean, New Jersey has Jeff Van Drew, and Alabama has...
Okay, it's not that bad. Parker Griffith was a Democrat, switched to the Republicans, lost his re-election primary, then switched back to the Democrats and got 29% in his 2014 governor bid.
Yeah. Anyway,
now he's an independent. If you didn't know.
Yeah. So the 5th, the 5th has two important communities of interest, and historically that's Huntsville, which was somewhat Republican back in the day. And then the Tennessee Valley, which is these counties over here: Lauderdale, Limestone, Colbert, Lawrence, and Morgan. Franklin historically was in the 4th, but because of the expansion of the seats, this has to be it. But Mel Brooks, he's very right wing, and he makes the news for saying outrageous statements. But I mean, his voters.
And he could just run for Senate in 2022 as well. So that could theoretically. We have to keep in mind that an open Shelby Senate seat would probably yield a very competitive, crowded primary. So a lot of these seats a lot of these could end up being open seats. So like, even if Calhoun is in the Palmer seat, if Rogers runs for Senate, that seat's just going to be open.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, there's really not much to say here. I mean, it's R plus 18. And I mean, the trends in this seat are a little bit, they're pretty stagnant because Huntsville is moving leftward somewhat, but then the rest of the Tennessee Valley is definitely moving rightward. I mean, if you look at the partisan lean, you can see some residual support here along the river, which is the county boundary here. But a lot of that is just from majority black precincts. I mean, 10, 20 years ago, a lot of this would have been very blue. But yeah, so I guess now we get to the pièce de résistance, which is this monstrosity known as the 6th district.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so I just want to take
it's very effective though.
Well, yeah, see, so you can take a look and see exactly I could have been a little bit more shameless up in the north, but down south I did a pretty good job of basically packing all of the black voters into the 6th district.
Wait, can you click on the black in the demographics tab? Just to show where.
Yeah.
And then it shows specifically where they the black voters are.
I didn't want to go further down into Mobile because I thought it just looks dumb to do that. So one interesting thing, here's a question for you guys. Is it possible to make this like a 50.1% VAP black seat, but also have it lean Republican?
I don't think it is, but
I don't think that's possible. It doesn't sound possible.
It would be around like D+6 or D+5. I mean, I've drawn stuff like that before. It
Okay,
wouldn't be
yeah.
it would be about as Democratic as like the Nashville district or the Louisville district in Kentucky.
Yeah, no, because what I have done in the past is I've tried to make a fair map of Alabama, and I've done the Doug Jones seat, as I call it, for when he eventually loses his Senate race, and he can just run in an all Jefferson County seat if they make one for him, and then just a big rural black seat here, which, I mean, because of the population distribution, has to take in some of the wiregrass, so it ends up being pretty damn down the middle, like 49% white. And I was wondering if you could make it 51. But yeah, here you can see this is a D plus 21 seat, and it's 62% black voting age population. And that's because, I mean, that's because I took all of the black neighborhoods in Birmingham. So if you remove that, so you can see Birmingham doesn't make up the majority of the area, but Terry Sewell is very popular with the rural African American voters.
It only helps if you add Birmingham, obviously, to make it even more African American.
I mean, even without Birmingham, the seat's still 57% black. So, I mean, there's really not much to say. When it comes to redistricting, at least what we've seen historically, the GOP with minority seats really does love to just pack as many as they can. So, I mean, that's just what I did here. And I mean, because if they didn't, well, then they'd have to allocate these minorities somewhere, either by giving them to Adderholt or to Palmer. And Adderholt would probably be fine. Palmer would probably be fine, but I doubt either of them would want a bunch of black constituents from Birmingham. So generally speaking, yeah, this is my 5-1 map right here.
Yeah, it looks good. I think so far this has proven to be a really successful episode in terms of looking at our three maps. I mean, we had Eric with his map in case Alabama doesn't lose a seat, and we had us with our three. I mean, we had quite a few obvious similarities between our maps. We all, in our equivalent of the Gary Palmer seat, got rid of that little hook around northern Jefferson County. We all expanded the 5th district southward because it's growing. We had different interpretations of District 1 and 2. Obviously, Armin, you ended up bunking Barrymore with Mike Rogers, and we bunked him with Jerry Carl. And another similarity between our maps that Eric did differently was Eric drew his majority black seat into Mobile, and we decided to keep Mobile just plain in the first. So, yeah, I think it's all very, very interesting so far. And again, Alabama, regardless of how many seats you have, it's essentially going to be the one majority black VRA seat packing all the Democratic voters into one seat. And then the rest of them are solid Republican seats protecting incumbents, or at least to the best of their ability. Obviously, we can't protect Barrymore and Jerry Carl because if it loses a seat, one person has to go. But and I know the Alabama Republicans would probably get rid of Terry Sewell if they could, but I mean, that would be illegal. So
it's theoretically possible if there is no VRA, but there is a VRA.
Yeah,
and
there is a VRA, yeah. And
as long as John Roberts stays the median justice on the Supreme Court, Terry Sewell is going to be fine.
I mean, this is a state that voted for, I think Hillary Clinton won 34% of the vote here, so it would be very easy mathematically to draw Terry Sewell out.
It would be, but
especially because of how racially polarized the precincts are. Like, all the black people are here. There are a bunch of white people here. You can just cut them up very, very easily.
Yeah, well, I mean, the VRA is necessary in that sense to ensure that minorities have at least one bit of personal representation in Congress with that regard.
Right. I mean, some people on election Twitter would have a very troubling notion that the VRA is unnecessary, but it does.
Like you know who.
Exactly. Yeah. the one who calls these maps gerrymanders, we shall say.
Yep. All right. That's enough. So, okay. So we're approaching the final minute of this episode. So we're just all going to say our farewells. But again, thank you all for watching. This has proven to be pretty popular in terms of actual viewers tonight. But yeah, I mean, this is how it's going to be each week. Obviously, we're skipping Alaska next week and going right to Arizona because Alaska obviously is just an at-large seat. I mean, that would be a pretty boring episode. Yeah. So we're going right to Arizona, and Arizona is expected to gain a 10th district. So we're going to we'll have Eric. I guess if you already have a map with 9 seats, out of curiosity, in case it doesn't gain a seat.
It's going to gain a seat. It's not.
That's what I think. Yeah, I'm pretty 99% sure it gains a seat.
It's like North Carolina. It's absolutely gaining a seat, and there's nothing that could happen short of like a nuclear bomb going off in Tucson that would keep it from gaining a district.
So basically, yeah, come back next week and see Arizona same time. All three of us will be here with our 10 district Arizona maps. And next week, I'll be going over the Arizona system for redistricting. We'll be talking about that. So if you guys have anything quick to say before we wrap up.
No, yeah, this was fun. Thanks for getting this going, guys.
Mm-hmm. And we'll have other guests on this program as well. Over time, it's not necessarily going to be the same panel every week, but we'll be doing this every week with these different states, and we hope you enjoy.
It should at least be the three of us every week, or at least most weeks. I know for sure Eric and I we're good for it, and Armin will be on as much as he can. So yeah.
And definitely just to do this plug before the end, if you like what we're doing here, be sure to like and subscribe. We're going to be doing this every week. We have other shows. We have 4 weekly shows now on Elections Daily. So if you want to watch all of them along with our live coverage, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you get notified of that.
Yep. Thank you guys, and check back next week.